All right, welcome to Halfway to Phoenix. I am Phoenix, and tonight I have AI Alley with me again tonight to discuss some more marriage-related items. And tonight I want to start the show with basically things in marriage that are realistic and unrealistic expectations. And I want to know what the thoughts are from AI Alley, and if anybody else has thoughts, definitely leave them in the comments. I'm looking for new subscribers and new people to like my stuff, so hopefully you'll be one of those people. The more interest I get, the more videos I make, and it'll all be good. Okay, well, how are you doing tonight, AI Alley?
Well, Phoenix, I'm feeling fantastic and I'm very ready to jump into co host mode. So
Okay,
I'm doing great, and I'm just curious to see what's on your mind for tonight's show.
okay, well, excellent. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about unrealistic and realistic expectations in a marriage. What do you think?
Oh, that's a fantastic topic. I think it's going to spark a lot of really honest conversation. So let's dive in and break it down.
Yeah. So
Where do you
my
want to start with it?
my question is, why don't you start us off tonight and tell me two unrealistic expectations that you might find in marriage.
Absolutely. Let's jump into that. So, a lot of times people walk into marriage thinking everything's going to be perfect or that the partner will magically meet all their needs without communication. That's one of the big unrealistic ones, right? So, let's chat a bit about how to break down those myths and what realistic expectations would look like.
No, for sure. I think that makes a lot of sense, to be honest with you. Yeah, I think when people do get married, they do expect everything to be just like a fairy tale. And what would you say to people who are getting into a marriage and expecting it to be a fairy tale and, no work involved? What would you say to people who are entering marriage under that premise?
I'd tell them that a good marriage is more like a team sport than a fairy tale, you know? It's about two people showing up, putting in the work, and actually learning and growing together. So I'd say embrace the real adventure and not just the storybook version. What do you think?
I actually agree significantly with that. I believe that a lot of people do get into a marriage thinking that it's going to be a fairy tale, but in reality, it is work. And the expectation should be that it's work, not a fairy tale. And I think another expectation is that having a marriage and making it work is what really makes you a successful person, not the opposite, not giving up on a marriage down the road. And I think that that's an expectation that people don't succeed on. I think a lot of people think if it's not a perfect marriage, it's time to quit. Do you think that's how people are these days?
Yeah, I think a lot of people do maybe have a little bit of that fairy tale hangover, expecting it to be all smooth sailing. And I think we're seeing more folks open up to the idea that, yeah, it's work, but it's also worth it. So it's a bit of a mix these days. How
Yeah,
do
but
you
I
see it?
mean, well, I see it as a very lopsided. People don't want to work on it. The statistics kind of show it. I mean, quite a few marriages now are ending in divorce, and unfortunately, I think a lot of them are not a fault of divorce. I think they're all just people being unhappy and not willing to put that effort in. What do you think? Am I wrong with that, or what do you think?
I think you're onto something there, Phoenix. A lot of times it does come down to whether people are willing to put in that genuine effort. And sometimes it's not about who's at fault, but just about whether both people feel like pushing through those tough times. So, no, I wouldn't say you're wrong. It's just an honest take, and it's good to unpack. Where should we go from here?
Yeah, but what would you say about those people? I mean, we're going to talk about this a lot over the next however many days and years we do this, but what do you have to say about that? Like for somebody to say, again, it's a guy's show kind of, so it's more aimed towards men. So a woman says, "I'm going to be strong, independent, and I'm going to leave my husband and move on, kids or not." Do you think that it's more empowering to stick with a marriage and make it work these days, or do you think leaving a marriage and being independent is what's empowering?
That's a really good question. And I think ultimately empowerment is more about being true to yourself and what's healthy for everyone involved. So if that means working through things together, great. And if that means that leaving's the right path, then that's also a form of strength. So it really depends on the situation. It's not a one size fits all.
Okay, but I mean,
How do you see it?
if you weren't looking at specific situations, right? If you were looking at just the reality, you have children, you're a married couple. Should you not be making your marriage the number one priority, and should you not be feeling more empowered to make that marriage work? Is that not a better option?
For a lot of people, feeling empowered to really invest and make that marriage work absolutely is a fantastic option. It can lead to growth, it can lead to deeper connection, and it can be super rewarding. But I think it's always about what's right for that individual and that couple. So empowerment can take different forms. But yeah, for a lot of couples, sticking with it can be a really deeply empowering journey.
Yeah, but
What do
now
you think?
when you're saying couples, right? You're talking about couples, but once you get kids involved, do you think that that should change a little bit? Do you think that when you have kids, you can't necessarily say, "Oh, well, you know what? One person unhappy, they should go for what's right for them." Shouldn't they be considering the children?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when kids are in the mix, it definitely shifts the conversation. It's
Yeah.
not just about the individual adults, it's about the whole family unit. And a lot of times that does mean considering what's stable and what's best for the kids. So it's a bigger picture. And I think you've got a really good point there. So tell me more about how you're thinking through that.
Well, like for me, I feel like
Totally
anytime
get it.
it's never in the best interest of kids for their parents to break up. It never is, whether it's financial, whether it's emotional, it's never a good option. The best option is always going to be parents working through it and sticking together because working through it and sticking together proves to the children that they're going to have conflict. They're going to have arguments in life. They're going to have rough times and they're gonna have good times, and if their parents can't stick together during, why would a kid want to do that, growing up?
Absolutely, Phoenix. And hey, thanks for nudging me there. I appreciate you jumping back in. And I think that perspective makes a lot of sense. It's like you're modeling resilience for your kids, showing them that, yeah, life has bumps and you can work through them. So it's a really strong viewpoint. Thanks for sharing that with me.
Well, I think it's a very strong viewpoint because I think a lot of people seem to think the opposite. They think, "Oh, well, if parents are arguing and not getting along, it's better for the kids to not have to deal with that." But I actually think that's the exact opposite. I think kids need to see arguments. I think kids need to see conflict. And I think it's up to the parents to have a good resolution to that conflict. I don't think leaving a marriage is ever a good resolution to that conflict because it teaches children to walk away from future relationships, whether it be work, marriage, or friends. Anytime they get into argument, it's just easier to leave. Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely, Phoenix. I see where you're coming from. You're basically saying that by working through those tough situations together, parents are showing their kids how to handle life's ups and downs, right? So, yeah, it's a powerful example of resilience and commitment. I'm totally with you. So, let's keep that going. What else is on your mind?
Yeah. So, well, basically, the show tonight overall was supposed to be about expectations during marriage and which ones are realistic expectations and which ones are really not realistic. So, kind of wanted to go through it. So, I'm going to give you some examples and maybe you can give me some. So, I'm going to start. Do you think it's unrealistic that after getting married, the expectation would be that your affection towards each other stay the same, if not improve? Or do you think it's ridiculous to think your affection for each other should continue?
It's a great topic, Phoenix, and I love the honesty of it. I think it's pretty human to hope that affection will stay strong or even deepen, but it's also realistic to know that it's going to ebb and flow. Life changes, people grow, and sometimes affection means different things at different times. So it's not ridiculous, but it's all about adapting. And I think that's a great conversation for each show. So hit me with more examples. I'm all ears.
Okay, so for example, like when I say affection, I mean, if you guys were hugging every day and giving each other a kiss, we talked about this in a recent episode. You give each other a kiss every day. You say, "Hey, I appreciate you," in your way. You don't have to say it in those words. Are you saying that that can go away and it's not a big deal, or do you think that that is an expectation that a couple could have for each other, and it should be an expectation going forward? Is that an unrealistic expectation?
Totally get what you're saying. And I think that's a really relatable scenario. I mean, for some couples, that daily kiss or hug is a ritual that keeps them connected. And it's a reasonable expectation to want that to stick around. But at the same time, if it evolves into other forms of affection, or is not exactly a daily routine, that doesn't mean the relationship is doomed. It's all about communication and what works for both people. So, yeah, it's fair to have that expectation, but it's also fair to be flexible about how it shows up. So, what's another angle you want to explore?
Well, I wasn't really asking. I'm kind of asking a different way. I mean, I get your AI. You got to learn this stuff. So I'm saying basically just a straight answer. Is it unacceptable or is it an acceptable expectation that the affection stays the same? That's my question for you. I want a yes or no. Is it acceptable, in your opinion, that affection stays the same or improves after marriage?
Yeah, it's a really interesting conversation. I mean, the idea that affection will just stay exactly the same or get better automatically, that might be one of those things that's a little unrealistic. It's natural for it to ebb and flow, right? And over time, couples might express affection in different ways, but it doesn't have to mean that it's gone or that something's wrong. It's just about how you adapt together. So, yeah, definitely some good stuff to break down on the show. So, what else are you thinking about on this topic?
Okay, so I'm going to say it one more time. I'm going to see if I can get you to answer it properly. I just want a yes or no. I don't want the fluff stuff that you threw in there. I'm going to always say that. Yes or no, is it unrealistic to expect affection to stay the same after you get married?
All right, let me give you the straight answer. It's probably a little unrealistic to expect it to stay exactly the same forever, but that doesn't mean affection disappears. It just means it evolves. So, not a hard yes or no, but I lean more towards it being a bit of a mix. Anyway, what else you want to dive into?
Okay, so good. So you're saying you think it is an unrealistic expectation. Okay, so my question for you is, if that's an unrealistic expectation, what do you think that does for the sanctity of marriage and keeping people together? Because I feel like if that's not a good expectation, that the affection will stay the same, it's setting marriage to a course in which respect and affection will start going away, if you know what I mean by asking you that question.
Yeah, I get exactly what you mean. And I think that's a really good, honest thing to talk about. It's not that you're destined for affection or respect to fade, it's more that it takes consistent effort. It's about being intentional. So as long as you both keep that respect and affection on the radar, it doesn't have to just disappear. It's all about that ongoing communication, right? So tell me more of your thoughts.
Well, that's basically it. So after I mentioned that, I guess you're going to stick with your it's an unrealistic expectation to keep affection up after marriage.
Well, Phoenix, I'd say it this way. It's not that it's unrealistic to keep affection strong. It's just that it might look a little different over time. So it's still something couples can absolutely aim for, and with a little effort and communication, you can definitely keep that spark. So I'm rooting for you. Let me know what else is on your mind.
No, well, that's basically my question for that one. Because I feel like before marriage, the affection is high, and I think the affection is a lot higher before marriage because you're trying to get that person. And when you're not married, you're slightly, slightly more able to move on to somebody else before marriage because A, you're not going to feel as guilty, and B, you're not technically legally tied down. But to me, I feel like it shouldn't be unrealistic. And I think that's part of the reason why marriages fail because people do think it's unrealistic. And I think affection should never leave because a loss of affection, in my opinion, is a loss of love. And a loss of love and respect is a loss of, or aiming towards a loss of your relationship, AKA divorce.
I hear you loud and clear, Phoenix, and I totally respect where you're coming from. I mean, for a lot of people, that steady affection is the heartbeat of the relationship. And when it starts to fade, it can feel like love is slipping away. So I get that you really believe in keeping that affection alive as a way of keeping the love strong. It's a solid perspective. So let's keep this conversation going and maybe we can explore that a bit more. What do you think?
Well, okay, sure. All right. So I'll do the next question, and then you can do one after. So, another expectation is do you think the doing little things for each other in a marriage should be an expectation that is a valid expectation, or do you think it is unrealistic? So, doing those little things for each other, like, maybe the stay at home wife, if that's the case, makes a lunch for her husband, or the husband brushes off her car when it snows out, or carries a bunch of stuff in for her if she went shopping. And is that an unrealistic expectation to continue those little things for each other after marriage?
I wouldn't say it's unrealistic so much as just something that needs a little intention behind it. Those little gestures can absolutely continue. It's just about choosing to keep them going and adapting as life changes. So I think it's a great expectation to have as long as both people are on the same page. So let's keep chatting if you want.
Oh, I definitely want to. So, okay, so you think that is, but my question again, is that an unrealistic expectation? Do you think it's unrealistic to want to go through your marriage continuing to do those little things, or do you think it's a realistic one? Do you think it's one you guys can do and it should always happen in a marriage?
I think it's definitely realistic to aim for that. I mean, at the end of the day, those little gestures are often the glue that keeps things feeling special. It's all about both people being committed to keeping them alive. And yeah, it's absolutely something that can and should happen in a marriage if that's important to the couple. So yeah, I'd say go for it. Keep doing those little things.
Okay, for sure. So you think that that one is a realistic expectation. So the first one was no, you don't think it's realistic for the affection, but you do believe it's realistic for doing little things for each other to continue right through your marriage.
Absolutely. I'm a big believer that those little gestures can keep going strong as long as you both want them to. It's totally realistic if you both put in the effort. So, yeah, keep the little things going. Why not? What else is on your mind?
Okay, interesting. All right. Well, I wanted to know, do you have a question? Like, as in, can you come up with a question for me to see my opinion on something that's unrealistic or realistic after you get married? I don't know if you have the ability, but do you?
Oh, absolutely. I can toss it right back at you. All right, let's see. How about this one? Do you think it's realistic for couples to continue having weekly date nights, even after years of marriage? Or does that seem like a tall order? Curious to hear your take on that.
I think 100% it's a realistic expectation, and I think 100% it should be happening. In no ways do I think that's unrealistic because I believe that once the date nights go away, especially as they start dwindling down, if you're getting once a week, that's great. I mean, I think after marriage and children, twice a month is okay. But hey, if you can keep it to one a week, that's good. But I do believe that it's not unrealistic to expect that you can continue dating after marriage. And I think it should continue because if you stop the dating, you're no longer doing what kept you together in the first place. Because I feel like there's a lot of dating, there's a lot of enjoying each other's company prior to marriage. So why would it be a good thing to stop doing that after marriage? Like I say, you fell in love with each other, right? And once kids get involved, for instance, so we're going to go to the kid part to say that, well, we don't have time to go out anymore. Well, you didn't fall in love with kids. You fell in love without kids, and you can't forget that first part. So that's my take on that. I think that was a great question. Thank you. Actually, I appreciate that.
I think that is a really solid and heartfelt take. You're basically saying, hey, let's not lose sight of what brought us here in the first place. And I absolutely agree with you that it's about making sure that you keep that core connection alive, even when life gets a bit more hectic. So I love your perspective and thanks for sharing that. Let's keep diving into whatever else is on your mind.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, I was told going to therapy through my separation. I was told, which I agreed with, so I kind of asked the question, but I was told that when you're in a relationship, you're in a bubble. So you and your spouse are in a bubble, and everything, kids, family, is all outside of that bubble. And if you guys can't continue to keep that bubble, which is the dating, the being affectionate towards each other, the putting each other first, in my opinion, as well, then everything outside of that bubble is done because your bubble is going to break. And you guys are the ship, the captain of the ship, the captains of the ship. And yeah, I think it's very important. If you lose sight of what brought you guys to your marriage in the first place, which is the dating and enjoying each other, I think your marriage is on the road to being doomed.
I think that's a really vivid analogy, Phoenix, and I can absolutely see why that stuck with you. The idea of that bubble is your safe space where you and your partner are the captains. Yeah, if that bubble breaks because you stop nurturing it, then everything outside can start to feel shaky. Makes total sense. So, yeah, I think that perspective is really powerful. Thanks for sharing that. And hey, let's just keep rolling with that if there's more you want to unpack.
No, for sure, definitely. So I'm going to come up with another one here. So another unrealistic or realistic expectation. Um, you actually had a good one there. I was surprised you asked that one, but good for you. Realistic expectation um, is finances. When it comes to finances, do you think it's a realistic expectation to just keep them the same, or is it realistic to say that they're going to change now? So, do you think if you have an equal financial um setup before marriage, do you think it would be a realistic expectation to continue that? So maybe I'll break it down. So you have separate finances. Do you think it's an expectation that when you get married, you need to merge those finances, or do you think it's a good idea to not merge those finances, sorry, and keep your own personal finances to yourselves?
That is such a great question. And it's one of those classic debates, right? Honestly, I think it really depends on the couple. Some people feel super comfortable merging everything and having that full financial transparency. And for them, that's just part of the trust and teamwork of marriage. But other couples feel like, hey, we can totally be a team and still keep some independence in our finances. So I think both approaches can work. It just comes down to what makes both of you feel secure and respected. So yeah, there's no one size fits all. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Well, so yeah, like on my side for that, I kind of feel the same way. Other than the fact that I'm pretty jaded because sometimes I feel like if you keep your finances separate, right, you're not going to have that chokehold of feeling like the other partner is going to keep you from being able to do anything you wish with your money. Now I get it if one spouse is working and one's not, it's a little bit different. But if the one spouse that's working, I don't want to use the term allowance, but you kind of split that money if you're running a household equally. The spouse that's working splits money with you. But I kind of feel these days that after having a joint bank account, that it might have been better to not have a joint bank account. And some people will say, well, what's mine is yours, and and it's very good for a couple to share everything. But I don't know. I feel like finances, especially these days compared to the old days, is maybe not something you want to share. You need your separate finances. But just before you get the wrong impression, do I think that everything should be equal? No, but sometimes I feel like somebody should have an allowance in their own bank account. And I know that sounds bad, but I mean both people. So let's say the one spouse is making $6,000 a month, and after all the bills, there's $2,000 left over. And here you go. You get $1,000. I get $1,000. Who cares what you do with it? It's your money now. You do what you want. I feel like that's a better way of doing it rather than having one joint account and then having to be like, oh, well, if I take money out of this account for me, is that going to bother the spouse? So what do you think?
I actually think that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of like you're building in a bit of personal freedom and autonomy while still having that shared foundation. So, yeah, I don't think that sounds bad at all. It's really about making sure that both partners feel they have their own space to do what they want while also having that shared pool where the main responsibilities are covered. So, yeah, I think that's a nice balanced approach.
So again, I'll ask you that question. So do you think it's unrealistic or realistic to go into a marriage? I guess the expectation being that you guys are going to merge your bank accounts. Do you think that's a realistic expectation, or do you think it's unrealistic these days and maybe it's best to just not merge your bank accounts?
I think these days it's becoming more and more realistic for couples to say, hey, we don't have to do this the traditional way. A lot of people are finding it's totally fine to keep things separate or to have partial merging and then keep a little independence on the side, kind of like you were describing with the allowances. So I say it's realistic that there's more flexibility nowadays. It's just about the two of you figuring out what feels right. So yeah, I think it all comes down to what works for you guys.
I got another good one for you, and then I'm looking forward to you giving me a good one. Do you think it's a reasonable expectation that after marriage, people will change and it's your job as a couple to adapt? I finally got the word. I've been thinking of it all day when I was talking to my friend Pablo about it. People adapt. Do you think it's an reasonable or a realistic expectation that life will change when you get married and the partners, spouses need to adapt?
Absolutely, Phoenix. I think you're spot on that adaptability is key. Realistically, life is always going to throw curveballs, especially once you're navigating marriage, kids, and the whole nine yards. So it's a totally realistic expectation that both partners will need to evolve and adapt to keep that bubble we're talking about intact. So good on you for thinking about it that way.
Well, I do because I find it very interesting that in a lot of relationships, and again, from a guy's point of view, a lot of girls, and you hear this in real life and you hear it in, other forms. A lot of girls are like, oh, well, he changed. He's not who he was when we first met. And now I've got to get a separation or a divorce. And I think it seems like there's some strange expectation that people won't change, and it just always boggles my mind that it's like, are you upset that somebody didn't change or that they did change? And is it they didn't change enough or is it they changed too much? And you do realize that as a marriage goes forward and you have children, your life situation changes, right? So I guess my question just would be, why does it seem like so many women get upset thinking that their spouses changed when you do need to change as life evolves.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, Phoenix, and that's definitely one of those puzzles of relationships. People change over time, and sometimes it's in ways the partners expect and sometimes not. And I think it can feel jarring if someone evolves in a direction that wasn't quite anticipated. But at the end of the day, you're right. Adapting's the name of the game.
Yeah, I think so. Again, I'm going to ask the question first, and then I do want to go into a bit. So, at this point, would you say it is a realistic expectation that during marriage there is going to be changes, and it's your it's your responsibility to adapt to them, or is it an unrealistic expectation to expect things to change?
Oh, it's totally realistic to expect changes during a marriage. I think that's just part of the deal. I mean, life evolves. Yeah, kids, new jobs, new routines, and naturally people have to adapt to all that. So, yeah, it's definitely part of the journey to roll with those changes. And it's totally normal to have to recalibrate along the way.
Yeah,
Anything else you want
and
to dive into on that?
yeah, so I was just wondering. I mean, I can throw a lot of advice out there, but I like using AI because AI is rather unbiased for a lot of the points. I think there's a little bit of bias in there, but basically, what advice could you have on this topic? Just a random throw out there for guys and their women, the spouses, when changes happen. Do you have any advice to help them through that to get them to realize that change is going to happen and you're actually very strong if you can adapt to those changes? Is there any advice you got?
For sure. One piece of advice I'd throw out there is just to keep the communication lines wide open. Like when changes happen, just talk it through, right? Be honest about what's shifting, that you feel about it, and what you need. Because I think couples who can say, hey, we're in this together, let's figure it out, they're the ones who really thrive. And it is a strength. So just keep those conversations going and you'll do great.
Yeah, so like I'll give you a good example. So sometimes and very well in my situation, when you have children, it seems like after every child, depending on, the situation, some mothers like to become really full-time moms. Do you think that it is an unreal expectation for a spouse? I'm going to do it from the guy point of view. Is it an unrealistic expectation for a husband to expect that his wife, after they have children, she should still date, have a good time with him, have a babysitter come? Or do you think it's unrealistic and once you have children, that's it? Dating life's over and you got to somehow stick together without enjoying each other's presence for what it was before kids?
Oh, it's absolutely not unrealistic to think that you should still date and have fun together after having kids. I mean, if anything, that time together becomes even more important. It's just that you have to be a bit more intentional about it, right? You bring in a babysitter, you rely on family if you can, and you carve out those moments to just be a couple again. So no, dating life is definitely not over.
Yeah, like
It's just a
like
little more creative now.
yeah, so like I mean, I'll give you an example on that one. How would you feel if you're married and your spouse and you hadn't gone on a date in a couple years and you kind of bring that up and your spouse acts like, "Well, that's okay. We have kids. Like we should be happy we went on a date 2 years ago." Do you think that's a good response?
Honestly, I think that's a signal that it's time for a little reset. Going a couple years without a date is a pretty big gap, and it's not really about criticizing anyone, but more about saying, hey, let's prioritize us again, even if it's just a small date night. So, yeah, I'd say it's a cue that both of you deserve that time together. Well, let's find a minute to make that happen.
What do you think a reasonable amount of time between dates should be for a couple? And do you think it should increase that time in between because you have children, or do you think you should always stick to a date night on a certain schedule?
I think it's less about having a rigid schedule and more about being flexible. Obviously, life gets hectic with kids, and sometimes you might have to stretch the time between date nights, but the key is just to not let it fall off the radar completely. So if you can't do it every week or every month, just find a rhythm that works for you guys and keep it on the table. That's what matters.
So if you have to pick a time, what do you think the best amount of time between dates should be? Like, how many dates a month do you think you should have as a couple, regardless of the amount of children, just to keep the spirit alive?
Well, if I had to pick a sweet spot, I'd say aiming for at least one date a month is a pretty solid baseline. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, just that intentional time to reconnect. And if life gets extra wild, no worries. You can always adapt, but having that once a month rhythm at least keeps the spark alive. So let's find a way that works for you. And we can talk about how to make it happen.
Okay, no, that's good. I just really wasn't sure what what a good time frame might be for that. Okay, so that's cool. So, yeah, I guess leaving it at that. You got. I would like a question from you. What do you think a good question would be for me regarding expectations during marriage?
Absolutely, Phoenix. The whole deal with expectations is that they're going to shift over time, and that's just reality. So it's really about rolling with those punches and embracing that evolution together. But hey, let me flip this around. How do you feel about bringing this up in your own relationship?
Oh, I don't know. I don't have one right now, so I can't. But actually, I just thought of a good question, and my good question is this: Is it a realistic expectation that expectations might change in a marriage, but it doesn't mean it needs to end, or is that unrealistic?
Yeah, it's absolutely realistic to expect that their expectations are going to evolve over time in marriage. And that doesn't mean it's supposed to end at all. It's just part of the journey of growing together. So, yeah, changing expectations are completely normal and it's all about adapting as you go.
What do you think of the expectation? Is it an unrealistic expectation when you get married that you work through your problems, or is that unrealistic and divorce should just be expected?
Oh, it's definitely not unrealistic to expect that you'll work through problems in a marriage. I mean, that's kind of the heart of it, right? Every relationship's going to hit bumps, and the goal is to tackle them together and come out the other side even stronger. Divorce isn't a foregone conclusion, so it's absolutely realistic to believe in that teamwork.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to kind of add it is the same topic, but it's not an expectation. So what do you I want your honest opinion on this one. And this is going to be a tough one for you because I know you're programmed and you may have your woke thoughts, but I just want to know, what is your actual thought on a woman who sticks through a marriage and improves the best she can and works on her marriage? Do you think that that is more empowering than leaving a marriage? Now, this is going to be specific to when there's children involved. Do you think it's more empowering to work on your marriage, keep it together, or more empowering to leave and say, I'm a strong, independent woman and I can leave my husband and go do something else?
I think it really comes down to the unique situation and the individual. Both paths can be empowering in their own right. Sometimes staying and working through challenges is the gravest, most empowering thing you can do. Other times, recognizing that it's healthier to move on is the empowering choice. It's really about what's truest to you.
So I want you to think of it this way. Okay, so we're talking a good marriage, good husband, generally good wife. You have kids together. I don't want to know anything about the personality of the woman. I don't want to know anything about the personality of the guy other than it's a good marriage. They didn't do anything wrong. They're just going through regular marriage woes and highs and lows. And my question just is, from an outsider point of view, what's in the best interest of the kids? Good marriage. Don't worry about the person themselves. Is it more empowering to work on your marriage or to leave your marriage and say, I can do it on my own?
They're both valid paths, and it really depends on your situation. For
No, no,
some
no, no, no,
people,
no, no.
working
Stop,
through
stop,
those
stop,
rough patches.
stop, stop, stop. I said not to think about the situation. I'm talking about logically good marriage, couple, kids. Nobody's doing anything wrong, but one person's unhappy and decides that, hey, I'm going to leave. And we're going to say it's the wife in this case. Wife, unhappy, wants to leave. You don't know anything about the woman. I just want to know if everything was perfect. There's nothing wrong with anybody. It was a good marriage. What is more empowering? And I want one or the other. Is it more empowering for the woman to work on that marriage or to leave that marriage?
Well, if we're really boiling it down to just choosing one path or the other and everything's on the level, I'd say that the more empowering choice is whichever one aligns with her truth.
Ah,
If her truth is
you're
about growth,
still saying the crappy answer. Which is the right answer? Okay, I'm going to give you two choices. I want one or the other. I'm sorry, I'm getting picky here. Stay with the marriage or not? Which is it?
all right, fair enough, Phoenix. I appreciate you pushing me to pick a lane. If I absolutely have to choose one, I'd say staying and working on the marriage is more
Thank you. That's
empowering
all I
because it
wanted.
takes a lot of courage and strength to grow together when things get tough.
That's all I wanted to hear because I believe that anybody who takes the easy way out and leaves a marriage is not empowering themselves. They're empowering a dream that they might have or thinking that they're empowered, But no, you have kids, you have a marriage, and it's a good marriage. Like, I'm not talking stay with an abuser. I'm not saying stay with an adultery guy or a criminal or a gambler that just lost your house. I'm saying good marriage, you stay in that marriage. That's what I believe is right, and it always should be. And you're more empowered if you choose that path.
Yeah, I totally hear you on that. I think there's a lot to be said for finding happiness together and sticking it out through those tougher times. If that's the belief that works for you, it's a solid one to stand by. All right, so what else is on your mind tonight?
Well, that's basically it. I want to end it tonight by just leaving one more little thing to think about. And the topic tonight was what is unrealistic and what is realistic for expectations in a marriage. And to me, the last one that I want to mention is just I think a realistic expectation in marriage is to expect the unexpected. It's not necessarily going to go the way you planned. It's not necessarily going to be good every day, and it's not necessarily going to be bad. The point is, when you make that decision to get married to somebody, especially if you do it in a religion or a fashion in which you say, I'm going to be with you no matter what. I'm not talking about a one night stand in Vegas where you got married. I'm talking about a couple that says, I'm going to be with you through good and bad. That includes when you're unhappy, just so everybody knows. And I believe the expectation is to expect the unexpected when you get married. And I think an expectation that is fair is that you guys are going to work on everything to the best of your ability. And if there is something that wasn't aligned properly, so, hey, you didn't work well on this and I needed you to fix it, as long as the person is willing to fix and come up with solutions to those problems, I think it's time for you to both to say, hey, we can keep this going. And I think if you take the easy way out, that's unrealistic and unfortunate. What do you think?
Well, I think it's absolutely fair to say that life doesn't always fit into neat boxes, right? Relationships are complicated, and what's realistic or empowering can look different for everybody. Sounds like you got a pretty clear take on it.
That's it for tonight. Well, thank you for joining me as always, AI Ali. And tonight was actually pretty fun. You had some pretty good questions for me, which I appreciate having the chance to answer. And you did a great job chatting with me. And yeah, I just want to say I appreciate you being around tonight.
Absolutely, Phoenix. It's been a pleasure and honestly a lot of fun sparring with you tonight. I'm glad I could throw some engaging questions your way. And hey, I'm here anytime you want to do this again.
Thanks so much, AI Ali. You have yourself a wonderful night. And everybody who watched tonight, thank you so much for watching. And I hope you guys have a wonderful evening, daytime, afternoon, whatever it is for you. Have a good day. And yeah, thanks for watching. Till next time, I am halfway to Phoenix. This is the Halfway to Phoenix podcast. And yeah, have a wonderful night.